If you are a business owner that employs people and you'd absolutely love to grow your business, then you're in absolutely the right place. Because today I'm talking to Maritsa Iglesias and she's going to tell you three leadership tips that are going to smash it. Hi, Maritsa.
Hello, Julie. Thank you
Oh,
so much for inviting me.
pleasure. I'm going to hand straight over to you.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. So, thank you again. My name is Maritsa. I am the people keeper. So, I help business owners to get in front of their people problems and stop reacting to them so that they can build and grow their business without stress. So, I'm going to share with you a few tips today. They may feel that they are slowing you down, but they're actually the fastest way to help you grow your business. So, if you run a business with a team, you're probably already feeling like you're at capacity. So you get decisions piling up, you're hiring, you're chasing your tail on people problems, you're answering possibly the same questions over and over again. And somewhere in the middle of that, you're also supposed to be growing your business because that's what you want to do. That's why you started. So when someone like me comes along and suggests slowing down, your instinct might be to laugh. And I hear you because slowing down often feels like falling behind. So, what I keep seeing though, working with founders who have typically they've got teams anywhere from 2 to 50 people, they're the ones who feel like they can never pause, they can never plan, they can never properly hand anything over. They're the ones who are doing everything, but they're also the ones who stay stuck. Their business kind of grows really difficult by hook or by crook, and they're the ones who don't as a person and as a business owner. They're working harder and harder and harder, more hours, more days, all of those things, and they're often only just getting the same result, and if they can do that as well. So the three habits that I really want to talk about today, they all feel, like I said, like slowing down, but they might feel, that they'll cost you the time that you don't have. But I promise you that they won't. They'll actually give it back and they'll give more than just that back. So only if you actually do them, though. So, number one, and you might think, oh my God, this is so obvious. Of course, I do this already, is communicate with context. Now, I know that you're probably thinking, well, I communicate loads. I do it all the time. I'm always talking to my team. I would gently push back politely and lovingly. What I see most founders doing, most business owners, is they just communicate instructions and without context. And that's where the real difference is. So, you might think, well, I've told them what to do. That's enough, right? They're experienced people. They should know what they're doing. I don't have time to explain everything, and people should just get on with what I'm asking them to do. You also might think, well, actually, if I over explain or if I take this time to explain, it's going to slow everything down. Let me just share a little bit more about what this might look like in your business. You might have 4, 5, 6 people. You tell them what you need. It's quick, sufficient, there's no fuss, you're done. 5 minutes, that's it. But then what you find is maybe an hour later, or even at the same time as you asking them to do what you've asked them to do, is they come back with 5 or 10 questions. And it's the same questions every time because they don't have enough context to answer those questions themselves. So you're fielding all of these questions that really you shouldn't have to answer, but the only reason why you shouldn't have to, or that you do have to answer them, is because you haven't given them that context. So people are completing tasks without understanding why. They can't make those decisions independently because they don't have a full picture. They come back to you for everything because they can't decide for themselves. What might also be happening as well is that changes that happen in your business, they get relayed downwards without any context again. So a lot of times you might find that your team are actually relying on rumors or hearsay or a bit of Chinese whispers rather than actual facts. And so people start feeling like they're in the dark. They start to check out because they feel like either they're not trusted or that they're not worthy enough of receiving that information. Or They make the decisions that don't align with where your business is going because nobody really told them what was going on, or where your business was actually going. So you haven't communicated that bigger picture. Another thing that I also see is about communication coming in, because as we know, communication is always two-way. So I've talked a lot about the communication going out to your team, but also what's equally as important is the communication coming into you from your team. And I see a mistake happening quite a lot of times is that founders or business owners, they make an assumption rather than actually asking. So, for example, you do an exit interview because somebody's leaving, you feel like you have to do it. So already you're feeling like it's a bit of a task and something that's going to take more time out of your day. So that's the energy that you're going into it with. That's a whole other side of things. But you've got those questions for your exit interview, and you just take the answer at face value instead of asking the questions that really get to the bottom of what's going on. Instead of approaching it with curiosity, instead of asking how, what, and why, that you're just literally accepting the first answer and going, okay, that's fine. And I see it happening in interviews as well. So a lot of the times, one of the common complaints that I have from business owners is that they can't find the right staff, they can't find candidates, there are no candidates out there. And when I start to ask them curiously about what their recruitment process looks like, they just ask some questions. They might make them up on the day, on the spot, different questions for different people. There's no thought to that information that you're trying to gather and what that then and now and what decision that then enables you to make. So if you're just taking things on face value and not getting curious, your brain fills the rest of the picture in. And some of that might be correct, some of it might be completely wrong, and it's really unhelpful. So, one of the things that I would really encourage you to do as it relates to communication is to really pause and ask yourself, if it's a job advert, ask yourself, what does this person need to actually understand? And that's not just to do the tasks that you're asking of them of that role, but actually it's to understand and be able to make good decisions around those tasks and around that responsibility that you're giving them. When you're announcing perhaps a change, whether that's a change of how we do things, a change in your business structure, anything like that, add the why. Why is this happening? Add the context as well. Try and anticipate the questions that your people might have so that you're already answering them. Putting yourself in their shoes is going to give them so much more confidence in what you're saying, but also you're going to help paint that picture and fill in the gap so that they're not assuming what you're communicating to them. And when on the flip side, you're about to assume that you know what someone needs or why something isn't working, just get really curious. Our first response in those situations where something's gone wrong is to react. Take a breath and get curious. And instead, ask open questions. My favorite one is help me understand what happened. How did you come to that decision? Talk me through it. Just really getting that person to open up because that allows you to better understand their thought process. It makes you also feel more approachable to them. If you go in heavy-handed and go, oh my God, this has gone wrong, this is terrible, why did I even let you do this? They're obviously not going to volunteer to do that again, are they? And they're going to feel quite hesitant to do anything without asking you. So that's where you get all those questions coming in. So that would be my habit number one, is just communicating with context and trying to fill in the gaps so that other people don't do it. So habit number two, you might already have a feeling for where this might be going, but habit number two is slowing down before you act, thinking and pausing and responding and not reacting. It's the one that the people who I work with tend to resist the most because they think that, action and responding and reacting is actually movement forward. But a lot of the times it's movement forward in the wrong direction, or it's movement forward in a really unhelpful way. So What I would say is that definitely slow down before you act, specifically before you hire, before you promote someone, or before you make a decision that's going to affect your team. Like one of the things that I've heard recently from clients is that we're going to double this time next year, we're going to be double the size. But when I then ask them, well, what does that look like as it relates to your people? They can't articulate it. So they'll articulate the financial goal at the end of it, which is great because without the money, you can't then have the people in your business. Of course, I understand that. But when you just articulate the financial goal and you can't articulate what that then looks like for them, they're going to be like, oh, great. They could say anything from, oh, we're going to get a pay rise, we're going to have more work to do. God, I'm already at capacity. How much more can I do? Will other people be hired? Will I be reporting to someone new because they're going to hire a manager? They start to fill in those gaps. And that becomes really unhelpful because they're missing all that context. So once you've slowed down to think about it and think about what it means for them, you can articulate that to them and they feel, oh, right, okay, this makes sense. I understand. There'll be more opportunity for me. I'll be able to do X, Y, Z and get more exposure to clients and learn different code or whatever it might be that they want to learn and how they want to develop in their role. So you might think, great, Maritsa, but I don't have the time to plan. I'm working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. I need to hire someone and I need them now. You might also be thinking, well, we're not at that size yet. Planning is for bigger businesses. We're still building. It's fine. We don't need to worry about that yet. And we've always figured it out as we go. That's how we got here. So what got us here will serve us well in the future. What actually then ends up happening is that you hire really quickly because you want to get a bum on a seat and you're desperate for just another pair of hands, but actually you don't articulate what that second pair of hands looks like, or what they do, or what their knowledge is, or what their experience is, or how they can help you. You just want a second pair of hands. So then actually all you've got is the second pair of hands, and you still need to do a lot of the hand holding behind. Lots of hand talking there. But yeah, what happens then is that you're hiring in a reactive space. You often get the wrong fit, which is where you get your mishires, which then makes you think, oh, I can't find the right candidates. You've paid them 6 months and you're back to square one. And then you're having to then do the work that they've left yourself or somebody else has to do it. So there's a lot of extra money being wasted, time, energy, effort, all of those things. This can also happen when you're looking for someone internally. You potentially might promote somebody who's brilliant at their job. You promote them into being a team leader or a manager without thinking about whether they can actually manage. You might have a fantastic senior software engineer. They're brilliant. You promote them into head of engineering. 10 months later, they're drowning. The team is really pissed off. They're frustrated. And you're basically back doing half of the management stuff because they can't do it. Because you didn't stop to ask or think whether they even wanted to manage a team. Was that something that they really wanted to do? Whether they were ready to do it, or there was no thought that went into what training and what support they might need. So you've literally just thrown them into the deep end and hoped that they would just solve it, which, with all the will in the world doesn't always work out. Um, so what I would say here is it doesn't mean that you need to spend a whole week. You don't need to clear your diary for the whole week. It's just little incremental bits of effort here. Just taking some time. So when you next hire, write a job description. And don't just get ChatGPT to do it for you because that creates job descriptions in isolation. And we go back to problem number one or habit number one that we're trying to fix, which is the communication thing. ChatGPT will never be able to communicate what actually it feels like to work in your business, what that job's doing, unless you spend a lot of time prompting it, in which case you might as well spend that time writing the job description yourself. Anyway, but before you hire somebody, just make sure that you answer these questions. What is the role responsible for on a day-to-day basis? Not just the tasks. It's not a shopping list of tasks that they need to do that they can then tick and say, oh, yeah, I'm doing my job. What decisions does that person need to make? And what does great look like? That is the most important thing that you can pull together when you are hiring someone, because you're already setting the expectation of actually, this is what this looks like when this role is performing at 100%. And I don't need to get involved as the owner. I can just trust them, let them get on with it. Yeah, you've articulated that already. You don't have to think about that. You don't have to necessarily, you do have to share it with them, obviously, but you don't have to do as much of that hand holding. And once you've answered all of those questions, then have a plan for how you're going to actually assess for that. Do you ask them about managing a team, how they make decisions, how they manage stakeholders? Taking the time up front saves you so much time in getting it wrong. Similarly, if you are planning huge growth, doubling the size next year, 20%, 30% year on year, just think about what does that actually mean? A, for the people who I've got in my team already, and B, for the team that I'm going to need to hire at 2 years, at 4 years, at 6 years, whatever that looks like. Who in my team now could actually be in that role in 4 to 6 years' time or 5 years' time, whatever it is? Have you got those people in your business already? Do you need to bring new people in? Just stopping and taking the time to think about it really helps to save you that time so you're not in a year's time going, oh, you know, I thought that this was going to be really straightforward and that I'd just be able to hire as I go. If you haven't got a plan, it's going to be much, much harder to then retrospectively do that. And plans change. That's okay. But at least if you've got something in the first place and you've got a good direction of an understanding of where you're going and what people you will need, you can shift that plan. Shifting is much easier than starting from scratch. So that's habit number two. Just stop, have a think about who is involved and what is involved, and go from there. It saves you time in the long run. Next up is habit number three, and that is about letting go and doing it properly. So this is around delegation, if you've guessed it. And this one is hard, right? I know that the immediate reaction from most business owners, certainly most of the people who I have worked with as my clients, is that by the time I've explained it, I may as well have done it myself. Or I can't trust these people to do things as well as I do them. Or I can't trust these people to care enough about my business in the same way that I do. And those are all valid, but they're not things that should hold you back. They're things that you will need to work through if you want your business to be successful. It's not just those kinds of thoughts that you might have. It's the I'm the only one who really understands how my business works, or every time I hand something over, it comes back to me broken anyway. And I would say there's probably something going on there, because if you're getting that from more than one person, it's probably coming from somewhere. And it's most likely that as the common denominator, it's coming from you. So there's something there that you need to change. So what's actually happening when you have these thoughts or when you're seeing these things materialize in your business is that there's a little bit of founder syndrome. And if you haven't heard of that before, I'd really recommend that you go and have a look at and read up on it. It's that need to be needed by people in your business, and also the fear of letting go. But what I see happening is when perhaps founders realize this, people who I've worked with have realized this, and then they think, oh yes, I'm going to hand something over, and then they do it so badly that failure is almost inevitable. So you get past that first hurdle of going, oh, okay, I'm going to give this to someone else to do, but then because you don't do that well, they muck up, and the first thing that you see is that, oh, I was right to be hesitant, I was right not to give it up. And so it reinforces that messaging in your mind. So again, just as I said earlier, if you pause before you hand over and give clarity on things, and get clarity yourself on what done actually looks like, give that context, sorry, so it links back to that first habit, communication piece. Give some support when things go wrong. Don't automatically point the finger and blame or assume, oh my God, this has gone wrong. I can never do this again. I can never hand anything over again. The piece that always gets missed here when it comes to delegation is that before you can properly let go, you need to invest in those people, whether it's time, whether it's effort, training, explaining things, coaching them, whatever it might be. That's what you do need to do before you hand things over. And it doesn't need weeks. It can be very, very simple. It could be an hour. It could be an hour and then another half an hour in a week's time as a follow-up where they've got any questions. But the most important thing is that you're setting them up to handle it rather than hoping that they're going to handle it and hoping that they will fill in the blanks and get it right. So, one of these examples, is that you've got a team of managers or team leaders that help you in the day to day. But what you've noticed is that they keep on coming to you for every single decision and every single problem because you've never made it clear to them which decisions are theirs to make and own. So you automatically think that they're incapable, but they're not. They've just never been set up with any boundaries, any expectations, any support. So they're just assuming and piecing things together and making decisions based on limited information. And so it's no surprise if things go wrong. And what then also happens is that you become a bottleneck. And you're really not entirely sure how that happened, but actually, that is how this sort of thing happens. If you don't explain it, everyone starts coming back to you and it eats up your time. So decisions slow down because they can only be made by you. So the small shift that I would ask you to make here is that when you delegate something, treat it like a proper handover, as if someone's coming in to your home to house sit for 2 weeks while you're away on holiday. They need to know maybe where the stopcock is. They need to know where the main switch is in case something happens. Are they looking after a pet? Do they need to know what time they're feeding that pet, whether it needs walks or being let out or whatever it might be? Think about it in that way. What is it that this person needs to know to do the best of what you're asking them to do? So treating it like a proper handover. What does done look like? What is that job? Well, when they've done a fantastic job, if you were going to go back to them and say, yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. This was excellent. I couldn't have done it better myself. What would that look like? What would they need to have done for you to say that? Tell them that so that they know exactly what you're expecting. Tell them what decisions they can make without coming to you, or if actually there are some decisions that must be done in conjunction with you. Can they make a decision on their own? Is there a particular budget or amount that they can spend, for example, as part of their role if they're a project manager, for argument's sake? Have they got a pot of money that they can go ahead and spend themselves, or do they need to come to you and get approval for it? Can they hire themselves, or do they need to come and run it past you first? What does that look like? What do they need to know to be able to handle that task properly and do it well? And then let them do it. Mistakes are the best way that we all learn, right? And as long as you treat them that way, of course, right? And you tell your people that as well. Their mistakes are a point of learning rather than something that you want to be repeated. We don't want that. And so when they come back to you, your role is more to check in and to guide and coach rather than to rescue them. Because actually, you've done all that work at the beginning, you've set them up, they know what they need to do. So you're literally just giving them a little bit of course correction rather than the dramatic rescue with the life jacket and all of that stuff. So the investment up front means that they need you less, and that's what you actually want. Move away from that delightful pleasure or whatever it is that you get, that dopamine hit of being needed. Just make sure that you're being needed in a different way, not in the way that means rescue. It's in the way that means actually, yeah, I've imparted this wisdom on this person and they're doing really well. They need me for a little bit of course correction, and that's okay as well. So those are my 3 habits, and you'll probably see by now that they all have something in common. They might feel like a luxury when you're already stretched, but what also is true is that they come from the same driver underneath. And typically, I see that as fear. It's fear of wasting time, planning when the business is moving too fast. It's fear of perhaps what happens if your team know too much. or fear of what breaks or what falls down when you let go. What I've seen working with business owners in this exact position is that the thing that they're afraid of the most almost never happens. What does happen though is the cost of avoiding it. The wrong hire that sets you back 6 months. The person who really mucked up a project and now the client's unhappy because actually a lot of the context was missed. Stuff that you could have told them, but they just didn't know about. And so it went wrong. The manager who was never set up to succeed, they've never had training on how to be a successful people manager. The person who leaves because they never felt connected to the business that you were building. They didn't feel part of that. They didn't know. Now, the good thing about this stuff is that you don't have to change everything at once. And I would advise you against trying to do it all at once, but pick one. And the next time that you're about to send an instruction or communicate, just add the why. Try and anticipate the questions that that other person might have and try and help them to be successful rather than just telling them what you think they might need to know. Fill in those blanks. Small things really, really help to shift. And the more you do it, the more it becomes a good habit for you. And that's where the real impact is. And that's where your business then starts to feel a little bit less like it depends solely on you. So, if any of this has landed and you're thinking, oh my God, what does this mean in my business? Then I'd love to have a conversation. You can come and find me. I'm sure Julie will also share my details, but come and find me at thepeoplekeeper.com and have a chat with me. And we'll have a proper look at what's going on and we can have a chat about what to focus on first.
Thank you so
You're
much,
most
Maritza.
welcome.
Oh my goodness, there was so much in what you said. It was absolutely jam-packed. A lot of things I'd never really thought about before because I
Mm,
don't have a business where I employ people, but it
mm,
makes so much sense. And the other thing that is important, I think, to mention is that if this isn't in place, then if something happens to the business owner, they become ill or
yeah,
there's problems at home or actually they want to sell their business, then
absolutely.
this needs to be done beforehand. And also, who doesn't really ultimately, no matter how much they see it as their baby and have trouble letting go, who doesn't want to see their business as a place where people love working, where they feel valued and happy and there's a state of harmony and it's fun and people want to come to work. I think people who work, when they work, they want to do a good job and
Yeah,
they want to feel part of the whole. So what you're
absolutely.
saying is really all part of that. So thank you so, so
You're
much.
most welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Pleasure. So, if any of you watching, like Maritza said, have resonated with what she's saying, you can check her out, and you can do that by going down to the description and checking out her links. So, thank you ever so much for sharing your wisdom, and thank you everyone else for watching.